At my husband's family barbecue, his sister joked, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." Everyone laughed, except me. I just raised my hot dog and said, "Challenge accepted." That night, I packed my things, moved out, and cut contact completely. A year later, they're the ones who've been forgotten. This isn't just a story about a cruel joke, it's about the seismic shift it triggered, forcing me to confront years of silent injustice and reclaim the woman I was meant to be. I remember that moment with chilling clarity, my husband's sister, Amanda, smirking as she delivered the cutting line, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." And then, the worst part, the table erupted in laughter. Even Gregory, my husband of 7 years, chuckled. But something inside me snapped. I looked her dead in the eye, raised my hot dog, and said, "Challenge accepted." That very night, I moved out. I cut contact. I simply vanished. What happened when I finally reappeared a year later? Well, let me tell you. My name is Vanessa, and for 7 years, I'd been an outsider in Gregory's family. We met in our final year of university, a whirlwind romance that led to a proposal with a ring that cost more than my entire student debt. I was swept away by his charm, his intelligence, and what I thought was genuine love. When we married, I believed I was gaining not just a partner, but a new family. The Caldwells were everything my own working-class family wasn't. Affluent, well-connected, with a sprawling colonial home that felt like a movie set. Richard, the patriarch, a marketing titan. Patricia, the matriarch, a socialite managing charity boards. Amanda, the golden daughter, already a junior executive. Michael, the rebellious younger brother, still landed a cushy job through family ties. My own life had been built on grit, earned by a single mother working 2 jobs, understanding the value of every single dollar. The class differences, they were subtle at first, insidious even. Patricia would compliment my crafty design work as if it were a cute little hobby, not my profession. Richard would patiently explain basic business concepts to me over dinner, despite me having run a successful freelance business for years before meeting Gregory. And Amanda? Oh, Amanda. She'd correct my pronunciation of wine varieties or designer names, always with that saccharine smile. "They mean well," Gregory would say, whenever I brought up these constant microaggressions. "Amanda's just trying to help you fit in." That's how she shows love. But Amanda's love felt more like a slow poison. At our wedding, her maid of honor speech featured stories about Gregory's ex-girlfriends. When we announced we were buying our first home, she questioned if the neighborhood was really the right fit for a Caldwell. When I landed a major client, she wondered aloud if they'd hired me because of Gregory's family connections. God, how I tried to win them over. I volunteered for Patricia's charities. I referred clients to Richard's firm. I remembered everyone's birthdays. I laughed at their inside jokes, even when they stung. I dressed differently, adopted their vernacular, and swallowed my working-class pride when conversations turned to vacation homes and boarding schools. For the first few years, I clung to my freelance design business, building a modest client list. Then, Gregory got an opportunity that required extensive travel. Without a real discussion, it was just assumed I would scale back my career to manage our home life. My business dwindled. My world shrank to Gregory's intermittent presence and his family's judgmental orbit. I became a diminished version of myself. Last spring, I miscarried at 11 weeks. The physical pain was excruciating, but the emotional aftermath was worse. Gregory was away. He offered to come home, but seemed almost relieved when I said I could manage. Patricia sent flowers with a note, "Perhaps it's for the best until you're more settled." Amanda suggested that stress from trying to maintain my little business might have been a factor. Only my sister, Olivia, came to stay. She brought homemade soup, sat with me through tear-soaked nights. The contrast between her genuine care and my in-laws' clinical distance cracked something fundamental inside me. But I buried it deep, another disappointment to swallow for family harmony. By the time the annual summer barbecue rolled around, I was hollow. My design work was mechanical. My friendships had atrophied. My marriage felt like a performance. Yet, a fragile hope lingered that I could still earn genuine acceptance. The Caldwell barbecue was their sacred institution. Patricia planned for weeks. Richard showcased his grilling gadgets. Dozens of family, friends, business associates. It was where family status was displayed, loyalties confirmed, and outsiders identified. And despite 7 years, I was still firmly in the outsider category. That morning, I spent 3 hours making my grandmother's strawberry shortcake, the only dessert that had ever received a genuine compliment from them. Gregory, busy with calls for his Tokyo trip, rushed me out the door. "Remember, Dad's unveiling his new imported smoker," he said. "Try to act impressed." I nodded, clutching my dessert carrier, my sundress, carefully chosen to match Patricia's casual elegance dress code, already feeling tight. The Caldwell home buzzed. Caterers everywhere. Richard holding court by his smoker. Patricia tinkling with laughter. Amanda spotted us. "Vanessa, that dress is so cheerful." Her eyes scanned me. "The kitchen's getting crowded, but I'm sure you can find somewhere to put your contribution." Then she swept Gregory away, linking her arm through his, already launching into a story. I stood there, dessert in hand, searching for a friendly face. In the crowded kitchen, Patricia noticed me hovering. "Oh, Vanessa, dear. You didn't need to bring anything. We have the patisserie handling desserts." She waved vaguely. "But how thoughtful. Perhaps put it there for now." My shortcake was relegated to a shelf already overflowing with other, unworthy, guest contributions. As I left, I overheard Patricia instructing a server to make room for Amanda's authentic tiramisu at the center of the dessert table. The next 2 hours blurred. Polite smiles. Truncated conversations. I tried to talk to Gregory's cousins, but they were pulled away. I offered to help, but the caterers had a system. I tried to join a conversation about films, couldn't get a word in. Michael's wife, Charlotte, who had only been in the family 2 years, received entirely different treatment. Patricia proudly introduced her as our Charlotte, the pediatric surgeon. Amanda included her in family vacation stories she couldn't possibly have attended. Richard even asked detailed questions about her work. The contrast was stark. At lunchtime, Gregory reappeared. "Having fun?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. We filled our plates and I ended up between Gregory's elderly, hard-of-hearing Uncle Frank, and an empty space reserved for Amanda. Gregory sat across from me, already deep in conversation with his father. Amanda finally arrived, meticulously arranging her plate. She instantly commanded attention. With an anecdote about a celebrity. Charlotte asked appropriate questions. Patricia beamed. Even Frank leaned in. During a brief lull, I saw my chance. "I just finished a branding project for that new bakery downtown," I offered. "They're having their grand opening next weekend." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "How nice. Is that the place with the tacky neon sign?" "I drove past it yesterday. The signage is actually vintage-inspired," I explained. "The owners wanted to honor the building's history." Amanda cut me off with a theatrical sigh. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." That's how boring this conversation is. The table erupted. Patricia tittered. Richard guffed. Even Gregory chuckled, reaching for his beer. Frank joined in automatically. The sound surrounded me like cold water, shocking my system. I felt simultaneously hypervisible and completely invisible. My face burned, but my hands turned ice cold. In that moment, 7 years of accumulated slights crystallized into perfect clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't storm off. I didn't create a scene. Instead, I raised my hot dog in a mock toast, met Amanda's gaze directly, and said clearly, "Challenge accepted." A brief, confused silence fell. Amanda's smile faltered. Gregory looked between us, sensing a shift, but unable to grasp what. Then Patricia chirped, "Who's ready for Richard to carve the brisket?" And the moment passed. For the rest of the afternoon, I observed. I watched how easily they moved through their world of assumed privilege. I noted how Gregory blended with his family, occasionally throwing me an absent smile. I catalogued every slight, every exclusion. Most importantly, I listened to the quiet voice inside me that had been whispering for years, now finally loud enough to hear, "You deserve better than this." By the time we gathered our things, my decision was made. The drive home stretched in silence. Gregory checked emails. I stared out the window, mental calculations already running beneath my calm exterior. When we reached our driveway, he finally noticed my quiet. "Everything okay? You've been off since lunch." I considered my words carefully. Amanda's joke about me disappearing. "Did you think that was funny?" Gregory sighed. "Don't start with this again. Amanda was just being Amanda. You know how she gets." "You laughed," I said. "It was a joke, Vanessa. Not everything needs to be analyzed to death." He got out of the car, ending the conversation. That night, as Gregory slept, I stared at the ceiling, replaying not just the day's events, but the entire trajectory of our marriage. I thought about the bright, ambitious designer I'd been when we met. Confident. Passionate. Connected. Somewhere along the way, I'd started believing the Caldwell's subtle message, that I was lucky to be among them, that my inclusion was conditional, that my worth was determined by their assessment. I slipped out of bed at 2 a.m. to my home office. I opened my laptop and began methodical research, bank accounts, apartment listings in Seattle where Olivia lived, transportation options. By dawn, I had a rudimentary plan. Gregory left for golf, kissing me absently. The moment his car pulled away, I began executing my plan with surprising clarity. First, a call to Jessica, my college roommate. "I need a massive favor," I said. "Name it," she replied without hesitation. "I'm leaving Gregory today. Can you help me pack the essentials?" 2 hours later, Jessica arrived with coffee, packing supplies, and fierce determination. We worked efficiently: clothes, personal documents, irreplaceable mementos, my design equipment. "I can store whatever doesn't fit at my place," Jessica offered, carefully wrapping a framed photo of my mother and me. While Jessica organized, I handled the financial separation. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings into my personal account, not a penny more. I paid my share of the monthly bills. I made a list of subscriptions to transfer or cancel. By mid-afternoon, my car was packed with the distilled essence of my life. Jessica hugged me fiercely. "Call me when you're settled. And Vanessa, I'm proud of you." Alone in what had been our home for 5 years, I wrote Gregory a letter. I kept it simple: I needed time to reevaluate our marriage. I had taken only what was indisputably mine, contributed to outstanding bills. I asked for space and no contact while I sorted through my feelings. I did not share my destination. As a final act, I removed my wedding ring and placed it atop the letter. Next to it, I left a copy of Amanda's cruel joke, written verbatim, with the date and location noted clinically. Before leaving, I allowed myself one moment of sentimentality. I picked up our wedding photo. We looked so happy. So full of possibility. Gregory's smile reached his eyes back then. My own face shone with hope and confidence I barely recognized now. "Goodbye," I whispered, replacing the frame and walking out the door without looking back. The sensation of driving away was both terrifying and exhilarating. With each mile marker, the tightness in my chest loosened. By the time I crossed the state line, I felt like I could fully breathe for the first time in years. I checked into a modest hotel, using the credit card I'd maintained separately throughout our marriage. The room was simple but clean. After confirming my safe arrival to Jessica and Olivia, I turned off my phone. Gregory would be home by now. The thought brought neither satisfaction nor guilt, only a strange numbness. In the quiet anonymity, I curled under unfamiliar blankets and fell into the deepest sleep I'd had in months. Morning brought the first wave of messages when I briefly turned on my phone. Gregory's communications evolved exactly as I'd expected: confusion, then irritation, then concern, then anger. "Where are you? Call me. This is ridiculous. Come home. Your mother is worried. You're being incredibly selfish. I have the Tokyo trip in 3 days. Fine. Take your space. We'll talk when I get back." Not once did he mention Amanda's joke or his laughter. Not once did he acknowledge any understanding of why I might have left. I sent a brief text to my mother, assuring her of my safety, but requesting privacy. Then I turned off my phone again and opened my laptop to search for longer-term accommodations in Seattle. The challenge had been accepted. Now came the hard part. Disappearing not just physically, but untangling myself from the identity I'd constructed as Gregory Caldwell's wife. I was about to find out if Amanda was right, if my absence would go completely unnoticed, or if I could rebuild a life where my presence mattered on my own terms. Seattle welcomed me with 3 days of continuous rain, as if washing away my old life. Olivia had found me a month-to-month furnished apartment, a tiny studio with bay windows and creaking floors. After the sprawling suburban house Gregory and I had shared, it should have felt claustrophobic. Instead, it felt like a snug cocoon. The building's nothing fancy, Olivia apologized as she helped me carry my limited belongings. But the location is great, and the landlord doesn't ask too many questions. "It's perfect," I assured her, running my hand along the worn but solid kitchen counter. "It's just mine." That first week was a blur of practical arrangements. New bank account. Mail forwarding through Jessica. New phone. Updated profiles on freelance design platforms, carefully curating my portfolio to remove any work connected to Gregory's network. Gregory's messages continued, transitioning from anger to bargaining. "Whatever's going on, we can work through it. Just come home." I maintained my silence, not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. Every time I considered responding, I remembered the laughter around that picnic table, the years of subtle diminishment, the gradual erosion of my identity. Amanda posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story 2 weeks after my departure: "Family is everything. You can't choose who stays and who goes." Comments filled with heart emojis from various Caldwell connections. Gregory's mother called my mother, expressing theatrical concern while fishing for information. Michael's wife, Charlotte, sent a tentative text: "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I responded to none of them. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Jessica shipped the remainder of my belongings. I found a therapist specializing in family dynamics and marital trauma, scheduling weekly sessions that often left me drained, but incrementally stronger. "What Amanda said at the barbecue wasn't the cause of your departure," Dr. Lewis commented during our 3rd session. "It was the catalyst, the last straw." I agreed. "Tell me about the first straw," she prompted. That question unlocked a flood of memories, subtle digs disguised as helpful advice, achievements minimized, opinions dismissed, all while Gregory stood by, not malicious, but complicit in his silence. By month 2, I had secured 3 steady design clients. The work wasn't particularly creative, mostly formatting ebooks and social media templates, but it paid the bills. More importantly, each completed project rebuilt my professional confidence. One rainy Tuesday, I walked into a local coffee shop and noticed a striking wall mural. The barista saw me admiring it. Beautiful, right? The owner commissioned it from a local artist. She's looking for someone to redesign our menu boards and promotional materials. An hour later, I was sitting with Eleanor Marshall, the owner, silver-streaked hair, straightforward manner. "I don't care about your resume," she said, waving away my portfolio. "Show me your personal work, the stuff you do because you can't not do it." I hesitated, then navigated to a folder I'd barely opened in years. These were designs created for myself, experimental, sometimes impractical, but authentically mine. Eleanor studied them in silence. "You've been hiding," she finally said, looking up with sharp blue eyes. "These are good. Really good. But recent?" "No," I admitted. "I haven't done work like this in years." "Why not?" The question was simple, but struck like a physical blow. I found myself telling Eleanor an abbreviated version of my story, the creative passion I'd once had, the gradual sublimation of my style to suit the Caldwell aesthetic, the slow surrender of my artistic voice. Eleanor listened without interruption, then nodded. "You're hired for the menu project, but on one condition. You do one personal piece, something purely your own, every week. Bring it when we meet. I don't care if it's good or finished. I care that you're finding your voice again." Eleanor became more than a client. She became a mentor, pushing me to reclaim my creative courage. Through her, I connected with other local business owners. My calendar slowly filled with projects that engaged rather than depleted me. Meanwhile, Gregory's attempts at contact became less frequent. The divorce papers I filed were met with a barrage of calls I didn't answer. Eventually, his attorney connected with mine. The proceedings moved forward with clinical efficiency. Gregory's initial resistance gave way to resignation. For months into my new life, I allowed myself to check social media. Gregory's profile showed him at a company event, smiling beside a woman I didn't recognize. Richard had posted about the Tokyo expansion, tagging Gregory with proud father emojis. Amanda shared multiple photos from a family dinner, captioned, "Missing no one." The confirmation stung less than I expected. Amanda had been right after all. My disappearance had barely caused a ripple in the Caldwell family pond. Somehow, this validation brought not pain, but liberation. I was no longer defined by their perceptions. 6 months to the day after leaving, I received the finalized divorce papers. Gregory had signed without contesting the straightforward division of assets. We'd negotiated through our lawyers. No alimony either way. A clean split. His only personal communication was a brief note, "I still don't understand, but I won't fight you anymore." That evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and cut my hair, shedding the long style Gregory had always preferred for a modern bob. The woman who stared back seemed both familiar and new, thinner perhaps, with faint lines around her eyes, but with a clarity of gaze I hadn't seen in years. By month 8, my design business had expanded enough to require a small workspace outside my apartment. I rented a desk in a cooperative creative studio. For the first time since college, I had colleagues who valued my input and challenged my ideas on equal footing. When the anniversary of my departure approached, I no longer needed to check social media to know what the Caldwells were doing. They had receded from my daily thoughts. Meanwhile, my new world continued expanding. A branding project for a local artisan food company won regional recognition. My redesign of Eleanor's coffee shop attracted attention from a lifestyle magazine. A comment I made during a design workshop led to an invitation to speak at a creative conference. 1 year after Amanda's fateful joke, I was no longer invisible. I had built a life where my presence was not only noticed but valued, where my voice was heard, not interrupted, where my contributions were recognized, not dismissed. The challenge had been met, but the story wasn't over yet. The email from Westwood Creative arrived exactly 52 weeks after the barbecue that changed everything. The subject line was innocuous, seeking designer for national campaign, but the content sent a jolt through my system. Your work for Rinner Artisan Foods caught our attention. We're developing a campaign for Sheffield Consumer Brands and believe your aesthetic would be perfect. Sheffield Consumer Brands was a subsidiary of Caldwell Marketing Group, Richard's company. The coincidence seemed too precise to be accidental. I called Eleanor. It could be completely legitimate, she reasoned. Your Rinner campaign was featured in 3 industry publications. But the timing is suspicious, I finished. The question isn't whether they know who you are, Eleanor said pragmatically. The question is whether the project is worth taking regardless. I requested more information. The project was substantial, redesigning packaging for Sheffield's entire organic line, with potential for a long-term contract. The budget was double anything I'd handled. After 3 days of deliberation, I accepted the initial meeting. If this was a Caldwell orchestration, I wanted to face it directly. And if it was legitimate, I didn't want fear of my past to constrain my future. The Westwood creative director, Thomas, made no indication he knew about my history with the Caldwells. We discussed design concepts, timeline, expectations, budget, with straightforward professionalism. When I asked about client involvement, he mentioned only that Sheffield executives would review major milestones. I accepted the project, establishing clear boundaries. For 3 weeks, everything proceeded normally. My preliminary designs received positive feedback. No Caldwell names appeared on any correspondence. Then came the announcement: Sheffield Consumer Brands would be featured at the annual Marketing Innovation Gala, unveiling their rebranded organic line. As the lead designer, my attendance was highly encouraged. The gala was a major industry event, precisely the type of opportunity my rebuilding career needed. It was also exactly the sort of function the Caldwells never missed. You have 3 options, my therapist observed that week. Decline and potentially limit your professional growth. Attend and attempt to avoid the Caldwells, which may prove stressful. Or attend and prepare to engage with them on your terms. What would you do? I asked. Dr. Lewis smiled. I'm more interested in what Vanessa today would do as opposed to Vanessa from a year ago. The question lingered. Last year's Vanessa would have either declined or attended as Gregory's apprehensive shadow. But I wasn't that person anymore. The following morning, I emailed Thomas confirming my attendance. Then I made an appointment with a personal stylist and set aside a portion of the Sheffield advance payment for an outfit that would serve as both armor and announcement. The evening of the gala arrived with unexpected calmness. I surveyed my reflection. The woman staring back wore a tailored jumpsuit in deep emerald, distinctive in a sea of black dresses. My bobbed hair was accented with subtle caramel highlights. Designer shoes added 3 inches of confidence. Most transformative was the expression in my eyes: no anxiety, no apology, just steady readiness for whatever the night might bring. The venue, a restored historic theater, buzzed. I checked in, accepted my name badge and a signature cocktail. I had barely taken 2 sips when Thomas appeared, introducing me to a cluster of industry executives. Business cards disappeared into my clutch as we discussed emerging design trends. I found myself speaking with easy authority, my opinions met with thoughtful nods rather than polite dismissal. 40 minutes into the event, I was deep in conversation with a magazine editor when I felt a shift in the room's energy. I didn't need to turn to know the Caldwells had arrived. Richard's booming laugh confirmed it moments later. I maintained my position, finishing my point about consumer psychology before excusing myself to the bar. As I waited for sparkling water, I scanned the room. Richard and Patricia held court near the entrance. Amanda wasn't immediately visible. And then I saw Gregory. Standing slightly apart from his parents, looking thinner than I remembered, diminished despite his perfect tailoring. Our eyes met across the crowded space. His widened in unmistakable shock, lips parting slightly as if to speak. I held his gaze steadily, neither smiling nor frowning, then deliberately turned my attention to the bartender. The first encounter came minutes later. Richard approached while I was examining the event program. "Vanessa," he said, his tone neither warm nor hostile. "Quite a surprise." "Richard," I nodded. "I'm the lead designer for Sheffield's organic rebrand." He blinked, momentarily disconcerted by my calm demeanor. I hadn't made the connection. "Their creative is being handled externally through Westwood." "Yes, I'm working with Thomas's team. The preliminary market testing has been quite positive." I spoke as I would to any client executive, professional and assured. "I see." He seemed to reassess me. "Your work has evolved since you left." "Not evolved," I corrected with a small smile. "Returned to its authentic direction." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Patricia is here somewhere. I'm sure she'd want to say hello." "Of course," I replied, neither encouraging nor discouraging. As Richard moved away, presumably to report his discovery, I rejoined the Westwood team. From the corner of my eye, I could see the ripple effect as Richard spoke to Patricia, whose perfectly maintained composure slipped momentarily as she sought me in the crowd. The Sheffield presentation was scheduled for the middle of the evening. As the time neared, Thomas guided me toward the staging area. We were nearly there when Amanda stepped directly into our path. Her expression a complex mixture of surprise and calculation. "Vanessa, no one mentioned you were involved with this project." Her tone suggested this oversight was somehow my fault. "Amanda," I acknowledged. "I'm working with Westwood Creative." "Thomas, this is Amanda Caldwell, Richard's daughter." Thomas extended his hand. "Miss Caldwell, pleasure to meet you. Vanessa has been exceptional to work with." "You know her work," Amanda's smile tightened. "We're family, actually." "Or were." "How nice," Thomas replied noncommittally. "Excuse us. We need to prepare for the presentation." As we walked away, Thomas glanced at me questioningly, but respected my privacy enough not to pry. I appreciated his professionalism more than he could know. The presentation itself passed in a focused blur. I spoke about design philosophy and consumer connection, demonstrated key elements of the rebranding strategy, and answered questions with composed expertise. The audience response was overwhelmingly positive, with several spontaneous rounds of applause. From my position on stage, I could see the entire Caldwell family seated together near the front. Patricia maintained a neutral expression. Richard nodded at impressive metrics. Amanda whispered something to the woman beside her. Gregory watched me with undisguised intensity, his eyes never leaving my face. After the presentation, I was immediately surrounded by attendees. Business cards exchanged. Potential opportunities mentioned. Connections established. This professional validation, earned entirely through my own merit, felt like the sweetest possible vindication. Eventually, the crowd thinned. I was gathering my materials when Gregory finally approached, alone. "You look well," he offered, hands tucked awkwardly. "Thank you," I replied simply. "I didn't know you were in Seattle." "That was intentional," he nodded, accepting this truth. "Your presentation was impressive." "You always were talented." "I always am talented," I corrected gently. Present tense. Gregory looked down, then back up with unexpected directness. "I've thought a lot about what happened, about Amanda's joke and everything before that. I didn't understand at first, but this past year has been," he paused, searching for words, clarifying. "I'm glad to hear that," I said, meaning it. I miss you, he admitted quietly. The words hung between us, once so desperately desired, but now arriving too late. I felt no triumph in his regret, no vindictive pleasure in his loneliness, just a calm certainty that I'd made the right choice. I need to join my team for dinner, I said, neither cruel nor encouraging. Will you be at tomorrow's workshop? Yes, I'm presenting the digital integration segment, he nodded. Maybe we could get coffee afterward, just to talk. I considered his request. I can spare half an hour, I conceded. Professional courtesy. Relief flickered across his face. Thank you. As I turned to leave, Patricia appeared at Gregory's elbow, her social smile firmly in place. Vanessa, darling, what an absolute delight to see you thriving. Her words were perfect. Her tone betrayed her discomfort. Patricia, I acknowledged. I hope you're well. We've all missed you at family gatherings, she continued, the practiced lie falling easily. No one makes strawberry shortcake quite like yours. The old Vanessa would have accepted this olive branch, however disingenuous. The new Vanessa held her ground. That's interesting, I replied pleasantly. I recall my shortcake being relegated to the pantry while Amanda's tiramisu took center stage at the last gathering I attended. Patricia's smile faltered briefly before recovering. A simple misunderstanding, I'm sure. Multiple simple misunderstandings over 7 years, I agreed, maintaining my pleasant tone. How fortunate that I now work in environments where such misunderstandings rarely occur. Before Patricia could respond, the event coordinator announced dinner seating. I excused myself with polite finality, joining the Westwood team at their assigned table across the room from the Caldwells. The remainder of the evening passed without further direct interaction, though I occasionally caught Gregory watching me from afar. As the event concluded, I declined the team's invitation for after-party drinks, preferring the quiet completion of returning to my hotel room alone. In the tranquil privacy of my room, I kicked off my designer shoes and stood at the window overlooking the glittering city. The confrontation I'd half dreaded for months had come and gone, leaving me not depleted, but strengthened. I had faced the Caldwells not as an apologetic outsider, but as a successful professional in my own right. Amanda's challenge, if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice, had precipitated not just my physical departure but a complete reinvention. The final irony was that by disappearing from their world, I had become more visible in my own. The morning after the gala dawned with unexpected sunshine streaming through my hotel room curtains. I prepared for the day's workshop with methodical focus. As I arranged my materials, I spotted Richard engaged in intense conversation with Thomas near the refreshment station. Attendees gradually filtered in. I was reviewing my slide deck when Amanda entered, scanning the room until her gaze landed on me. After a moment's hesitation, she approached. Good morning, she offered, her tone carefully neutral. Thomas speaks very highly of your work. Thomas is an excellent creative director, I replied. The entire Westwood team has been exceptional. Amanda shifted her weight. I didn't realize you'd established yourself in Seattle. Your presentation last night was impressive. Coming from Amanda, this reluctant acknowledgement was practically effusive praise. I thanked her with simple courtesy. Father is considering bringing the entire Sheffield account in-house after this campaign, she continued, watching me closely. He's been impressed with the direction. I understood the subtext immediately. If Sheffield became a direct Caldwell marketing client, my work would either disappear or be attributed to their in-house team. The old insecurity flickered briefly before I extinguished it. That would be Richard's prerogative as Sheffield's parent company, I said evenly. However, Westwood has contractual provisions regarding creative attribution that are quite specific. Thomas is particularly careful about protecting his designer's work. Amanda's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Before she could respond, the workshop facilitator called for everyone to take their seats. Our conversation ended with mutual professional nods. The morning sessions proceeded efficiently. My segment on digital integration strategies was scheduled just before lunch. As I took the podium, I noticed Gregory slipping into the back of the room. I delivered my content with confident expertise. The question period afterward was lively. When Richard himself asked about implementation timelines, I answered with specific benchmarks. As attendees broke for lunch, Gregory made his way toward me, but was intercepted by a Sheffield executive. I used the opportunity to step outside for fresh air. The hotel's courtyard garden provided a quiet respite. I had just settled on a bench when Patricia appeared. "You've always had excellent timing for escapes," she observed, smoothing her skirt as she sat beside me, uninvited. "I prefer to call it recognizing when I need space," I replied. Patricia studied me with new attention. "You've changed." "I've reverted," I corrected, "to the person I was before I started trying to fit into spaces that weren't designed for me." She sighed lightly. "Families are complicated, Vanessa, especially established ones like ours. There are expectations, traditions, ways things have always been done." "I'm aware. I spent 7 years observing those traditions. 7 years trying to meet those expectations. Perhaps we weren't always as welcoming as we could have been," Patricia conceded. The closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from her. But disappearing without a word was rather dramatic, don't you think? I turned to face her directly. "I left a detailed letter for Gregory. I ensured all financial obligations were properly handled. I made a clear, adult decision to remove myself from a situation that had become harmful to my well-being. There was nothing dramatic about it." "Gregory was devastated," she countered. "Gregory was inconvenienced," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." Patricia's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. "You have no idea what this past year has been like for him, for all of us." "You're right," I acknowledged. "Just as you have no idea what the previous 7 years were like for me." We sat in tense silence before I continued. "But I'm not interested in exchanging pain metrics, Patricia. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm good at what I do, and my work has value to Sheffield's campaign." Something shifted in Patricia's expression. Not quite respect, but perhaps a new awareness. "You always were stubborn." "Determined," I countered with a small smile. Another distinction worth noting. As we headed back toward the conference center, Patricia asked an unexpected question. "Will you be at the closing dinner tonight?" "Yes, Westwood has a table." She nodded thoughtfully. "The salmon is usually excellent." It was such a normal, mundane observation, the kind mothers-in-law typically share, that it momentarily disoriented me. I murmured agreement as we separated. The afternoon sessions focused on implementation strategies. I participated actively but maintained professional distance. As the workshop concluded, Gregory finally managed to approach me directly. "Still up for coffee?" he asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Yes," I agreed. "There's a shop in the lobby." We walked together in silence. Once seated with our drinks, his usual Americano and my latte ordered without need for discussion, the awkwardness intensified. "Seattle suits you," he finally offered. "It does," I agreed. "The creative community has been welcoming." Gregory traced the rim of his cup. "I've been in therapy since you left. Dad thought it was unnecessary, but," he shrugged, "it's been helpful." This surprised me. "I'm glad," I said sincerely. "My therapist helped me understand some things about our marriage, about my family." He met my eyes directly, about how I failed to see what was happening to you because it was easier not to. The acknowledgement was unexpected and disarming. For a moment, I glimpsed the man I had fallen in love with. "Thank you for saying that," I replied quietly. "I didn't stand up for you," he continued. Not against Amanda. Not against Mom. Not even against my own expectations that you would just adapt to whatever the family needed. No, you didn't, I confirmed without rancor. I thought a lot about that barbecue. About Amanda's joke and how everyone laughed. How I laughed. He swallowed hard. I keep thinking about what you said. Challenge accepted. I didn't understand then what you meant. And now I realize you were declaring independence from all of us. His voice held equal parts admiration and regret. We talked for nearly an hour. Gregory shared how the family dynamics had shifted in my absence, Amanda's increased criticism, Patricia's tightening control, Richard's disappointment when Gregory declined a promotion. I'm seeing everything differently, he explained, like someone adjusted the contrast on a photo I've been staring at my whole life. When our coffee cups emptied, we both recognized the natural conclusion. As we stood to leave, Gregory asked the question I'd been expecting. Is there any chance for us? I considered his face, once the center of my world. I felt affection, compassion, even a whisper of the old attraction. But the tether had been severed, not just by Amanda's joke or my departure, but by the year of growth that followed. I think we both needed to become different people, I said gently. And I like who I'm becoming now. He nodded, accepting this truth with surprising grace. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. We both were, I corrected. You just needed different circumstances to discover it. We parted with a brief platonic hug that felt like proper closure. As I watched him walk away, I realized I truly wished him well in building a life that was authentically his. The final confrontation came unexpectedly as I was collecting my portfolio from the conference room. Amanda entered just as I was preparing to leave. Her purposeful stride suggested she'd been waiting for this. I need to ask you something, she said without preamble, and I'd appreciate an honest answer. All right, I agreed, curious despite myself. Did you take this project knowing it was connected to our family? No, I answered truthfully. I discovered the Sheffield-Caldwell connection after accepting the Westwood offer. By then, the contract was signed. She studied me, assessing the truth of my statement. And you didn't think to recuse yourself once you knew? Why would I? I asked simply. I'm extremely good at what I do, Amanda. This project needed someone with exactly my skills and aesthetic sensibility. The fact that your family company might ultimately benefit from my work is incidental to my professional obligations. So, it's just coincidence that exactly 1 year after you disappeared, you reappear working on a project connected to us? I had to smile at her persistence. Life rarely arranges itself with such perfect symmetry. But yes, essentially. I don't believe in coincidences that convenient, she countered. What would be the alternative explanation? I asked. That I orchestrated an elaborate year-long plan, building an entirely new career in another city, establishing relationships with agencies unconnected to your family, all culminating in this specific project? That would be giving you far more space in my thoughts than has actually been the case. The blunt assessment landed visibly. Amanda blinked, perhaps for the first time, considering that she might not have been central to my decisions at all. At the barbecue, she said after a pause. When I made that joke, it was just a joke. I never thought you'd actually leave. It wasn't just a joke, Amanda. It was the articulation of something you'd been communicating for years, that I was dispensable, forgettable, unimportant. I kept my tone conversational rather than accusatory. And you weren't wrong, in a way. In the context of your family, I was those things. What I needed to discover was that there are contexts where I'm not. Amanda's composure slipped momentarily, revealing uncertainty. Gregory hasn't been the same since you left. Gregory is finding his own way, I replied. As am I. And there's no chance of reconciliation? The question seemed driven by family concerns rather than genuine care. We've reconciled in the only way that matters, I said. We've both acknowledged the truth of our marriage and found peace with its ending. Amanda nodded slowly, absorbing this finality. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. Your presentation yesterday, it was genuinely good work. I would have said so regardless of who you were. Coming from Amanda, this professional acknowledgement represented a fundamental shift. I thanked her with simple sincerity. As I left the hotel to prepare for the evening's closing dinner, I felt a strange lightness. I had faced each Caldwell individually, navigating these encounters not as the insecure outsider of last year, but as a confident professional with clear boundaries. The family that had once loomed so large in my life now seemed properly proportioned, just people with their own limitations and complexities. The final dinner that evening unfolded with surprising ease. The Caldwells and the Westwood team were seated at separate tables, creating natural distance without obvious avoidance. When industry colleagues introduced me to Richard as the designer behind Sheffield's brilliant rebrand, he acknowledged my work with professional courtesy. When Patricia complimented my dress during a chance encounter at the dessert station, I accepted graciously. Most tellingly, when Amanda's presentation on upcoming marketing trends included a slide featuring one of my designs with proper attribution, I recognized it for what it was, a public, professional acknowledgement that would have been unthinkable a year ago. As the evening concluded, I exchanged contact information with several potential clients, confirmed next steps with Thomas, and said appropriate goodbyes. Gregory approached briefly, simply wishing me safe travels and good luck with a sincerity that needed no elaboration. Leaving the venue, I felt no dramatic sense of triumph or closure. Instead, I experienced the quiet satisfaction of having reclaimed not just my professional identity, but my personal sovereignty. The Caldwells were now simply people I had once known intimately who now occupied appropriate space in my past rather than outsized significance in my present. Amanda's challenge, if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice, had been not just accepted, but transcended. I had disappeared from their world only to reappear transformed in my own. 1 month after the marketing conference, I sat across from Eleanor at our regular corner table in her coffee shop. Seattle rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a cozy backdrop. So, the Sheffield campaign officially launches next week, Eleanor noted. That must feel satisfying after everything. It does, I agreed. Thomas called yesterday to say early retailer response has been overwhelmingly positive. They're already discussing extending the rebrand to additional product lines. And the Caldwell connection? I considered the question thoughtfully. It's become professionally cordial. Richard's marketing director reached out about potentially collaborating on future projects through proper channels with clear contracts. I haven't decided yet whether to pursue it. That's quite an evolution, Eleanor observed. From family outcast to sought-after professional resource. Life has interesting symmetries sometimes, I acknowledged with a small smile. The Sheffield project had marked a turning point in my career. The visibility of the campaign had attracted attention from other potential clients. My portfolio now included work that reflected my authentic design voice. Most importantly, I approached each opportunity with clear boundaries and confidence in my value. The divorce had been finalized with surprising smoothness. Gregory had been fair in the financial settlement, even generous in certain aspects. We maintained no direct contact, but our lawyers reported professional cooperation. My only personal request, keeping my original engagement ring that had belonged to my grandmother, rather than the Caldwell family diamond Gregory had later insisted I upgrade to, was granted without argument. My regular therapy sessions with Dr. Lewis continued, though we had reduced the frequency. Our conversations had evolved from processing acute emotional trauma to exploring healthier patterns for future relationships and continued self-discovery. The interesting thing about healing, Dr. Lewis had noted, is that it's rarely a return to your previous state. It's a transformation into something new that incorporates the experience without being defined by it. This resonated deeply. I wasn't trying to recapture who I'd been before meeting Gregory. I was integrating that younger self's passion and confidence with the wisdom and boundaries hard-earned through difficulty. Jessica visited Seattle for a long weekend, marveling at the changes. You laugh differently now, she observed during a hike. More from your belly, less from your throat. That's oddly specific, I teased. But accurate, she insisted. You used to laugh like someone who needed permission. Now you laugh like someone who's giving herself permission. These subtle transformations accumulated. I found myself speaking up in creative meetings without rehearsing my thoughts. I began dating casually. Nothing serious yet, but enjoying the simple pleasure of connecting with interesting people. I joined a community garden and discovered unexpected joy in growing tangible living things. An unexpected development came in the form of a friendship with Charlotte, Michael's wife. She reached out via professional email, ostensibly to inquire about design services for a pediatric clinic she volunteered with. Our initial coffee meeting evolved into genuine connection, based on shared experiences as Caldwell outsiders and mutual professional respect. Amanda is actually taking parenting classes, Charlotte revealed during one of our lunch meetings. She's pregnant and determined not to repeat family patterns. The news surprised me. Not just the pregnancy, but Amanda's self-awareness. That's encouraging. People can change when properly motivated, Charlotte observed. The family dynamic shifted after you left, made some things visible that had been conveniently ignored. Whether my departure had been catalyst or merely coincidence, I took no particular credit for these evolutions. The Caldwell's journey was their own, just as mine was mine. 6 weeks after the marketing conference, I was selecting produce at a farmer's market when I heard a familiar voice. Amanda stood at the next stall, examining artisan cheese. Her pregnancy was visible now, creating a softer silhouette against her typically tailored appearance. Our eyes met with mutual recognition. After a moment's hesitation, she approached. Vanessa, I didn't know you shopped here. Every Saturday, I confirmed. They have the best heirloom tomatoes in the city. The awkwardness was palpable, but not hostile. We exchanged brief pleasantries. Then Amanda surprised me. I've been thinking about what you said at the conference, about contexts where you're dispensable versus valued. She adjusted her bag uncomfortably. I'm discovering something similar in preparing for motherhood. Everyone has advice about who I should become, how I should change. It's illuminating. Contexts shape us, I acknowledged. But they don't have to define us. Amanda nodded thoughtfully. The parenting class Charlotte probably told you about? It's helping me recognize some patterns, things I never questioned because they were just normal in our family. I heard the unspoken comparison to my own journey of recognition and separation. Self-awareness is powerful, I offered. Yes. She hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic vulnerability. I don't want my child to ever feel like they need to disappear to be seen. The admission revealed deeper reflection than I would have credited Amanda with a year ago. I didn't offer easy absolution. Our history was too complex for that, but I did offer simple human acknowledgement. That's a good place to start. We parted with no dramatic reconciliation, no promises of future connection, just a moment of genuine communication. Walking home with my market purchases, I reflected on the strange trajectory that had brought me from the Caldwell BBQ to this present moment. The challenge Amanda had unknowingly set, if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice, had indeed been the catalyst for profound transformation. I had disappeared from a life where I was diminished, only to reappear in one where I was valued. I had lost a family that required my conformity, only to build a community that celebrated my authenticity. I had abandoned security that came with compromise, embracing instead the uncertain adventure of self-determination. Last week, I had closed on a small house near the water. Nothing grand by Caldwell standards, but perfectly suited to my needs and purchased entirely through my own earnings. As I arranged my furniture and hung artwork selected solely for my own pleasure, I experienced a profound sense of having created not just a home, but a life genuinely my own. The greatest irony of Amanda's cruel joke was that disappearing had made me more visible than I'd ever been, to colleagues who valued my creativity, to friends who appreciated my authentic self, and most importantly, to myself. The challenge had been not just accepted, but transformed into an unexpected gift. That evening, as the Seattle skyline glittered against the darkening water, I opened my journal and wrote the reflection that had been forming for months. Sometimes we must disappear from others' narratives to discover our own. The most powerful response to being unseen is not demanding vision from blind eyes, but finding the context where our true selves are not just visible, but celebrated. The opposite of disappearing isn't being noticed. It's becoming so fully present in your own life that external validation becomes unnecessary. The woman who had raised a hot dog in defiant toast 1 year ago could never have imagined the journey ahead. The woman writing these words could never return to who she had been. And in that transformation lay not tragedy, but triumph. The quiet, sustainable victory of reclaiming one's own life.